Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Becoming Anchored podcast. It's good to be with you all this morning. I'm Lauren Jackson. This is Laura Deneen. We're the hosts of Becoming Anchored. We're two licensed therapists in the Brentwood, Tennessee area. We work in a group private practice. We see all kinds of things and we work with all kinds of people, and we really love what we do. And we're excited to continue this journey with you all on this podcast platform. Quick disclaimer before we get into today's content. This podcast and this episode is meant for informational purposes only. So if you are finding that as you're listening to our content in our episode today that you might benefit from working with a therapist, if you're local to us, reach out. We'd love to connect with you. If not, reach out to someone local to you. So this is not intended to be your therapy. However, we hope that it is encouraging to you all today.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. We're so glad to be with you all today. And if you're new to this show, then welcome. We're so glad to have you here. We would love to hear from you. So definitely shoot us an email or follow us on Instagram at Becoming Anchored Co. And yeah, Lauren came to me a while ago just with a desire to start a podcast. And so I just jumped right on board, and we have had so much fun. It's brought us both so much fulfillment and joy doing this show, and so we're so glad to have you. Really, the purpose of this podcast is twofold. So one, we're really just first and foremost humans, and we are here to ride the waves of life with you all. As you know, life can be really hard, it can be messy, and we're here just to be humans with you all first and foremost. And then secondly, we have the amazing gift of sitting with clients on a daily basis, and Lauren and I both just truly love our work, and we find it so rewarding, and we really love being therapists. And so we will also be sharing some of our therapeutic wisdom on this podcast. If you're local to Tennessee, we would love to see you, so please reach out. If not, we encourage you to find a therapist local to you. So today we were kind of chatting about what we wanted to talk about, and Lauren and I both agreed that we are going to be talking about how to get the most out of therapy. So this feels like a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I know it's near and dear to Lauren's heart as well. And Lauren is really in the details of Anchored, training our staff and our team to really, be the best therapist that they can be and show up fully for their clients. And so yeah, I think that we have a lot of good nuggets of wisdom to share today.
Yeah. As I'm thinking about this topic of how to get the most out of therapy, the first thing that kind of comes to mind is, if we're investing in a therapist and we're going to therapy and we're kind of invested in that process, it feels like maybe a common curiosity that perhaps some people listening might wonder of, well, why would you not want to get the most out of therapy? Or why, I wonder why this is a thing that maybe some people struggle with, especially if we're paying for it and if we're choosing to spend our time, in that way. And, I think for those of us who have been in the therapy space as the client, and maybe those who are listening who either have been or are, one of the things that we say to our new clients when we're kind of in the intake process is we would kind of talk through risks and benefits of counseling. And so some of the risk of counseling is that it doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
And it can feel kind of really bad. And so that because of our human instinct reaction towards pain of any kind, whether it's physical or emotional, I think that it's common, or it can be really common as we get into the process and start touching on wounds or pain points, that we would have a tendency to pull back and to do the things that we do in the midst of pain that maybe aren't always the most functional or the most healthy. And I will like raise my hand and say, I literally did this the other day. So, so yeah, that's just the first thought that comes to my mind is, what do you mean how to get the most out of therapy? Like, are there people who don't want to get like something out of therapy? And it's like, well, I don't know if it's that we don't want to. I wonder if it's that sometimes the pain that can show up can cause a natural avoidance reaction. And so, yeah, that's just the first thing that like came to my mind as I was thinking about this.
So much wisdom, Lauren. Y'all, I just like love learning from Lauren, and I love hearing her talk. I love the language that you use, and you are just a wealth of knowledge. And I mean, yeah, I agree. I think that we as humans can all have a tendency to avoid. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't think that anyone signs up for the therapy process and is like, I don't want to get something out of this.
Right.
But this episode really is to address, the purpose of this episode is to address the nuances that we will see both in ourselves and, you know, working with clients. And so like Lauren's talking about, we as humans avoid in all sorts of ways. And especially as we begin therapy, it can almost be like peeling back the layers of an onion, or kind of thinking of it like shoveling dirt. So when we shovel, we kind of dig in and then we get the dirt and we kind of move up. So I'm using my hands. If you're not watching this episode, essentially we oftentimes feel worse before we feel better in the therapeutic process, because we are uncovering maybe unhelpful or problematic behaviors. Maybe we're grieving something, or maybe we're working through our shame about something, and that can feel really hard because as humans, we don't necessarily wake up and think, yeah, I want to feel a lot of shame today, or yeah, I really want to work through my grief. So this is where taking a posture of being willing to do the work in therapy, even if we don't necessarily want to, can be a helpful reframe for you if you're listening today and you're maybe newer to the therapy process, or maybe you've been a client for a long time and you've done extensive therapy and you're in a season where therapy does feel really hard. And so we're just here to say, if that's the case for you, that is a normal response.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. We talk a lot in the practice too about approaching versus avoiding. So Lauren referenced this, but yeah, it's the idea of, hey, can I approach my pain with the hope that I can make meaning of it, or learn new ways of coping, or move through my grief, versus avoiding it. And that takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of people, I think, in our lives, that hopefully we have people that are supporting us as we're approaching our pain as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not uncommon either to start the therapeutic process going in with an idea of what you want to work on and like the goals you have. And then maybe you and your therapist establish that in the first few sessions, and then maybe either quickly on or at some point on in the process that changes and new things come up that maybe need more of the attention, and maybe those things are perhaps even a little bit more painful. So it feels like something a theme we're kind of talking about underneath this umbrella of like how to get the most out of therapy is this idea of like you just said, Laura, like leaning in versus like pulling away. And I think big answer to this question, how to get the most out of therapy, is to always try and lean in, right? Like to pay attention to when it feels more natural to lean in, when you're wanting to pull away, and can I lean into the process? And then there are, of course, like underneath that, like all different other little things that we can do to also really reap the benefits and all of the good things that come out of the process. And when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about on this episode, like what topic, Laura, you had mentioned this idea as well of like finding a good therapist. Like, how do you find a good therapist? How do you find a therapist that you feel is really qualified and is perhaps maybe even specialized in the thing that you're seeking out therapy for, who is going to be really invested in you and your process, and who's going to challenge you. And sometimes we can't always know that until we get in the room with someone, maybe even for a couple of sessions.
Sure.
So I think that can be a really important kind of first step maybe in this idea of how do I get the most out of my therapy space? Well, I need to find the right therapist for me. Maybe like number one.
Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful point. I mean, reading a bio is one thing, but then as humans, when we're face to face with someone, that is something else, on its own. So yeah, I mean, most practices will do a free 15 or 20 minute consult, and Lauren is actually doing that on the front end for clients that we take on at Anchored. But I think that is really valuable. And some questions that you might ask your therapist is, how do you practice? And the way that we would most likely answer that is we are relationally oriented. We collaborate with your team, whether that's a physician or psychiatrist or dietitian. We are direct, and we find that challenging our clients, of course, in a loving, kind way, really supports their growth. And we have a treatment plan, and we want our clients to be working towards their goals. And of course, they can see us as long as they feel that they're getting something out of it. But we are kind of always reevaluating their treatment plan and asking them whether they feel like they are getting what they need out of their time with us. So certainly take advantage of that 15 or 20 minute free consultation. Most practices do offer that. And then I would also encourage you to ask what their experience is in working with whatever you are struggling with. So we treat a lot of eating disorders and OCD, anxiety. A lot of us are trained in various trauma treatments. And so definitely ask what their experience is in working with other individuals that have your same presenting concern. So those are just my tips around the kind of that first step of finding a therapist that can be really fruitful to your therapeutic journey.
Yeah. And you have permission to, if you're a few sessions and it doesn't feel like a good fit, to speak up and say that, right? And I think that can be part of our part of the work we can do to get the most out of therapy. Because then if you don't say anything because you don't want to hurt the therapist's feelings, and you just keep doing therapy with them, you're not going to get the most out of it, because it's not maybe the safest or whatever relational fit with a therapist. And so that can impact how much you get out of that therapeutic process.
Yeah. And I know that therapists I've seen, I value warmth. I value openness. Of course, they've had appropriate boundaries, but I really want to feel like I know them as well, and that they're like really with me with whatever I'm talking about. And I kind of have a good gauge on that at this point in my being a client, right? That I kind of know what I'm looking for. And so like Lauren said, I think a lot of times clients might be afraid of hurting their therapist's feelings, or, not speaking up if they don't feel like they're getting what they need, or perhaps they don't feel like they're making progress towards their goals. And that can be problematic in and of itself, because as good therapists, hopefully we are all wanting our clients to make progress towards their goals, and we're wanting them to live beautiful and meaningful lives. And I think that's the mark of a good therapist, is like, yeah, I do want you to meet your goals, and I want you to live a values-based life and live a beautiful, big, fulfilling life. And that's certainly what I know that you want for your clients, and what I want for my clients. So those are all just tips that we have. And then we will ask our clients if they feel like they are getting what they need. And so if your therapist hasn't asked that, it's okay to speak up. It's okay to share that you may or may not be getting what you need from a counselor or therapist. But circling back to this, like leaning in versus avoiding, one other thing that came to mind as you were talking, Lauren, is really leaning into our why. I was actually just talking to a client about this yesterday, but when things get hard, what is my why? That can really be helpful in terms of answering this question of how to get the most out of therapy. there will be times when maybe we feel like we take 2 steps forward and 1 steps back, but going back to our why and why am I showing up for myself? Why am I doing this hard work? And we have to be careful not to slide into shame when we ask ourselves why. So really having a posture of curiosity around that, I've found can also help us get the most out of therapy. So short term, I might be uncomfortable, but long term, I know why I'm continuing to make the intentional choice to show up to therapy, even if it is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're kind of utilizing like your values. Like what
Totally.
am I valuing that is helping me lean into this thing when it gets hard?
Yeah.
Which our values help us live the life that we want to live. They help us stay within that like vein of what is meaningful and important to us, even when there's pain or difficulty. Our values are like a guide. They're like this helpful like guide, and so that can be really like beneficial when you're thinking about oh wait, okay, I'm on session number whatever, and why am I still coming? This kind of sucks right now.
Yeah. Or maybe my therapist is pointing something out that I've struggled with, but I've pushed down or I've suppressed. And gosh, this feels really icky right now, uncomfortable to talk about. I have literally been a client and like slid down the couch or like tried to like shimmy my way out of a conversation. And I'm laughing about this now because this was, I don't know, 7 years ago. And my therapist was calling something out of me, and however you respond is okay, but staying in it, whether that means you need to shimmy down the couch or sit on the floor, or perhaps your therapist asks to sit on the floor with you, whatever it is, that's okay. But there's just permission to be human in the therapy space. And hopefully good, effective therapists will be able to be in that pain with you in a way that helps you move through the pain and then also become more resilient. But those kind of icky, uncomfortable moments, I have certainly experienced that as a client. And I can do the shimmy like in uncomfortable conversations with my husband, Sean, as well. So that's not just like a therapy thing.
Yeah. So I think that can be helpful too. And you telling that story brought this thought up for me. We're all about, and if you've listened to any of our episodes so far, we're all about this idea of like building awareness and building insight, interoceptive awareness, and knowing our internal world, our internal process. And so that can be a helpful thing to utilize in this space when we're thinking about my tendency to like avoid or lean away. How do I know when I'm doing that? Like, how do I know when I'm starting to do that? Like Laura, maybe she like, her body starts getting uncomfortable. She starts like,
start doing
whatever. I will like avoid eye contact. So if I can have that like interoceptive awareness, like in the moment in my sessions when I'm starting to notice, oh, I'm like totally like avoiding eye contact. Something must feel uncomfortable right now. Oh, that's an indication that I need to lean in.
Right. Or even put words to that.
Yes. Like put words to, whoever your therapist is, I'm like noticing like this thing is happening in my body right now. I think that this is really uncomfortable for me. And so you will hear that theme come up in every single one of our episodes, this noticing, building awareness, knowing our interpersonal relationship. And so, you're going to get something really great out of therapy in that moment with your therapist if you can pause and say, this thing is happening right now, because chances are that's happening all the time outside of the therapy room. And so if you have a good therapist, they're helping point that out for you too. So that awareness piece is important. And then when we think about, so getting the most out of therapy, that looks like probably like moving towards our goals, getting healthier, growing, whatever that thing is for you, right? And so here at Anchored, and you guys probably, if you've been listening, know this about us now, that we give homework. And we call it homework because we don't really know another good word to use for it. It's not like you don't get graded on it. You're not coming in and we're giving you like an A, B, or C, right? But the reason we do is because I tell my clients this, 95 to 98% of your therapeutic work happens outside of this room. Like 5% maybe happens with me because I'm only seeing you maybe 50 minutes a week. And that's a significant 50 minutes or 5% or whatever. And that other 95% is just super important. And so we find that if we can give our clients a thing, whatever that is, to take with them, we're giving them something valuable, and they are going to continue that therapeutic process, hopefully in between the span of our time, so that they can reach their goals faster or whatever, right? Make that growth in a more productive or consistent way or whatever. So that could be another really important thing to kind of have on your radar when you're looking at therapists, maybe having a 15-minute consult. What do you give homework? Do you how do you encourage your therapists outside of, when they're leaving your session, in between sessions? Maybe speaking up and asking for, hey, we talked about this thing today. How can I take that with me? Can you help me know what to do in between sessions to continue processing this thing? So maybe looking for that in a therapist, and then I would say do the homework.
Yeah. And and I love this. And as someone who has, I know that we've both been in therapy for quite some time, and Lauren and I really value getting feedback from our therapists or from people that love us well, and that can be really, really helpful. And sometimes we don't feel like doing the homework, or sometimes we are afraid of what might come up if we do the homework, or sometimes we just don't do it at all. And so even if your therapist has assigned some homework for you and you don't do it, there's still room to process that in therapy, right? So I know I have certainly avoided doing homework, and I'll take ownership over that. And then my therapist and I talked about what was happening for me, and is it because I had too many commitments? Is it because I didn't want to feel the emotion that might come up when I was completing the homework? What was it that got in the way of me doing the homework? Because even that can be really rich information to talk about in the therapy space. So your therapist is not going to be disappointed or mad at you for not doing the homework, but rather a skilled clinician is going to talk about what's underneath and what caused you to perhaps avoid doing the homework with loving care. And this is why there is that professional relationship to be able to process that for you in a healthy way. And maybe it's too much too soon. Whatever it might be is okay, and we can work through that together in the therapeutic space. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other things you can think of that can help us get the most out of therapy? I'm just trying to think of any other kind of practical little tidbits that might be helpful or that are useful. Maybe as us as therapists, but then also us as clients, because we both are clients too.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think even if you don't have the ability to practice that awareness, hopefully your therapist is pointing that out so that you can start noticing either the shimmying or the lack of eye contact outside of therapy. I definitely think building a network of safe people who know about your therapeutic process, we are really continually working on that with our clients, because we want them to practice the skills both on an intrapersonal and interpersonal level that they are learning in therapy. But again, this work can be hard, and so we all benefit from having community. And so different mental health diagnoses that I've received over the years, having people that, I know are with me in it, and building out that safe network of people that know what I may be struggling with has just been really fruitful for me. And my best friend will sometimes text me and be like, hey, what'd you talk to your therapist about today? Or is there any way that I can support you? Or did she give you any homework? And do you need accountability around that? And of course, my husband knows, and different people in my life that have felt safe to me. But I do think that that can just be an additional layer to address with clients. And if you're listening and you're in therapy, I would encourage you to consider thinking about sharing with a safe person, because again, your therapist most likely, hopefully, adores you and is your biggest cheerleader. And we also need people outside of our therapist to support us.
Yeah, totally.
So that's one thing that came to mind.
Yeah, I love that point because I think you and I, Laura, have both seen firsthand that our clients who either we help them cultivate a support system outside of therapy, or they have a healthy support system where they can feel safe to share the things that we're like processing through in therapy. They, I can tell they're getting more out of the process because they're probably able to engage with that process even more outside of the session too. Yeah. So 5 things that I'm like taking away from this that I feel like we've talked about, just to recap for our listeners. So finding a good therapist, 15-minute consult call if they do that, reading bios, asking questions, seeing if in the first few sessions it's a good fit. Do they give you homework, that kind of thing. Leaning in versus avoiding. Building awareness, that interoceptive awareness. There were 2 other things that I had. You just said community. So, like having safe people, having community. There was one other, but I guess you guys get the point.
You talked about giving homework. I think that
do the homework.
Doing the homework. Yeah.
Do the homework. Yes. So those 5 things are the kind of 5 main points that we really wanted to hit on today that we really believe, like for our clients right now and for us as clients, really help us all get the most out of this process, even when it's hard and even when it's painful.
Yeah. And just for extra kicks and giggles, I'm going to add a 6th. So setting expectations and asking your therapist about, the treatment plan and setting appropriate expectations for yourself. And you can do that with your therapist, but oftentimes we are not going to experience relief from our pain and suffering in 2 or 3 sessions. So that just popped in my mind. So we'll just add an additional 6th today. But setting expectations, it takes time to change our neural pathways in our brain, or to make meaning from our pain and suffering, to find relief from pain. And I think that is important to name today, just because we live in such a fast-paced culture where we have almost been conditioned to do this thing and then experience this immediate result. And therapy takes time. That's not to say that we expect our clients to be in therapy forever. Some clients of mine I've seen for a while, some have taken a break and come back to me. Of course, we want them to be living their best lives, and it does take time to shift some of those neural pathways, and it takes energy and effort and intention. So I did want to just add that 6th as it came to mind.
Just to clarify, so expectations meaning like, how frequent do I come to therapy, and what does that mean, and what does that look like? Yeah.
And hey, therapist, what do you what is on my treatment plan? And I've shared this, and what is your opinion on that? How long do you see this process lasting? While also knowing what this piece of information that I've shared today, that most mental health diagnoses are not treated in 2 or 3 sessions. So I think that just that expectation as a client, if we're going to therapy or if we're starting therapy for the first time. Thank y'all so much for being here. We hope this was helpful. We are big believers in therapy as therapists who practice daily, and also as therapists who are clients and who really value the work that we do on a personal level with our own therapist. So thank you so much. As you all know, we like to close with homework and an affirmation. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the homework, and Lauren will offer the affirmation. But I really want you to think about perhaps what you feel is or isn't working in your therapeutic process. And then I also want you to think about what you may or may not be avoiding. And it's important to think about, to practice this through the lens of curiosity and grace for yourself as you engage with this homework activity today. And then Lauren will close with the affirmation.
Yeah, so I just wanted to leave you guys with this quick little thought. When things are hard or painful emotionally, you have the ability to lean in. You are strong enough to lean in. So,
yeah. Thank you. I'm going to take that with me today too.